Because I'd chosen to live in such a beautiful place and I was building a new house, which isn't very eco-friendly in some ways, I wanted to compensate by making my new house as eco-friendly and as green as possible. Well, I looked at various possibilities, including wind turbines and solar panels, but I don't believe the Lake District National Park planners, I'm in the National Park, I don't think they would have agreed to those options. So I also looked at ground source heat pumps, and that seemed to be my best option. I think the total figure is around £16,000, but that does include the underfloor heating. The ground source heat pump itself would be around £7,000. Then there's the digging of the trenches through the field with the slinkies. That was about £2,500–3,000. I'd got £1,200 from Clear Skies grants, which was quite nice. I get the most wonderfully warm house with a very pleasant background heating. There are no hot spots by radiators, and it's just always warm. And I don't have to worry about it. Well, this is the heat pump. This looks rather like a large fridge or freezer, and there's controls for the heat pump. There's the green light. If it turns to red, it's there's some sort of problem. And this is a computer really. At the moment it's telling me on the main screen that the room temperature is set at 20 degrees and that the heat pump is operating for warm water. If I move further into the computer, I can choose any of these. I can look at the heat curve, for example. So I'm pressing onto the heat curve. And here it's telling me that the curve is set at the moment at 40 degrees centigrade. And that if the outside temperature is above 17 degrees, the whole thing will be switched off. This is the brine tank, and this is the essential that it's kept topped up with brine to keep the whole system running properly. This is the heat store where water is saved until it's required to go through the underfloor heating system. Well, behind this door is the underfloor heating manifolds which are connected to the heat pump, and as you can see, all the various rooms are listed there, and each one has its own separate manifold, and all these go under the stone flooring and keep the heat going within the rooms. This is the electric box that helps to control the temperature, and all these wires are connected to various room stats. The heat for the heat pump is provided from this field, and trenches were dug and slinkies, which are long black pipes, put into the trenches, and they start from my boundary down there in a parallel lines. They go right up to the house, and they pass through a very wet area to make them more efficient. It's worth people knowing that if you live particularly in a conservation area or a national park as I do, then you may need planning permission or permission from Natural England to dig these trenches in your field. Well, when it was first installed, I suppose it seemed okay at first. It was much bigger than I thought it was, and it was quite difficult to house it, and I had to have the extra tank and so on. But it seemed to me that once the builders had gone, the problems started, because I didn't have anybody to show me how it worked in conjunction with the underfloor heating, and there were cold spots, and it seemed to be running all the time without the house being particularly warm. And although the builder was coming backwards and forwards, he didn't seem to have any more idea than I had. We didn't seem to get much backup from the company itself, particularly the underfloor heating company. It wasn't so much the heat pump company, but the heat pump company had recommended the underfloor company to work in conjunction with one another, and it didn't seem to be that didn't seem to be the reality. And so there were lots of phone calls and quite a lot of frustration trying to fix the setup, really. And that went on for a long while. It's got resolved very recently because now I rang asking how I could get the heat pump service because my builders have gone into administration and I no longer have their help at all. And fortunately for me, a local company in Carlisle have just set up in partnership with the suppliers of the heat pump, and they were like knights in shining armour coming to the house and sorting all my problems out that I'd had for 2 years. And they discovered actually an even bigger problem that I was blissfully unaware of, and that was that the wiring had been incorrectly done. Not just incorrectly done, but it had been dangerously wired up, underwired. And when they took the old wiring out, it had actually melted. I have a report from the company. Had it gone on for any longer, it would probably have meant a fire or electric shock or some such thing. So that was marvellous, because they've sorted out that problem. But not just that, the everyday problems they've sorted out as well, it would seem. I don't any longer have cold spots in the house, and it doesn't have to be boosted with expensive extra electricity, and that seems to be working very well. The cost, again, is not as I was led to believe. My costs are actually around £700 a year. Now, of course, part of this is due to electricity hikes, but nevertheless, it is more expensive than I was led to expect, although perhaps not as expensive as oil. Because I was concerned that it hadn't had any maintenance, and as I say, my builder had gone into administration, I did ring up a new local installer who was willing to come out and service it, and they've been fantastic. They came out straight away. They serviced the boiler and told me how I should maintain it in between times, and the cost for that this year was £150. Now, I was delighted they've come, they've been brilliant, but in the sales blurb, it said that it didn't need regular servicing, and so that £150 is a cost which is going to be regular now that I didn't really expect. Well, if I was going to do it again, I would like a company who is supplying the ground source heat pump to be much better partnered with the underfloor heating suppliers. There was no, although they recommended them, there was no communication between the two companies, and that has been very difficult for me in understanding how they match up. Originally, I was going to get the ground source heat pump people to install the whole thing, but my architect set up a contract with the builder, and the builder took the whole thing over. I regret that, because the builder brought in various trades that frankly didn't have enough knowledge about ground source heat pump systems or underfloor heating. And also I would check about the size of the thing, because originally I thought it was going to look like a big freezer, and now I've got an awful lot of other things that go with it that have taken up quite a bit of room. And I would put it outside. I would not have it, as I have it, in a big cupboard in my house. I think my advice is more towards the companies, actually. I think they need to be much more customer friendly, and to have the backup of local installers before they sell these machines. And so for individuals, they need to make sure the company are going to give them that service. I wish in some ways I'd dealt with it more myself and pinned the company down to what I was going to get within the package after service. And I didn't do that. I left it to my architect and my builder. And I think, although that wasn't admitted, they were as ignorant as myself in some ways about the new technologies. The sales brochures tend to suggest they're simple, easy machines that anybody can use. Well, they're not. They're quite complex. There's lots of things about them that we don't know about. So the average person doesn't know about who had oil or gas central heating in the past.